What's up, everyone? Welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Aaron Hepler, your host. Today, we're going to be talking to my buddy, Trey Kearns. Trey is a real estate agent for whitetail properties in West Virginia. And let me tell you, he is an expert on properties. So we do dive into that a little bit of springtime scouting, an awesome story about a foul weather buck, a little bit about some plans for hunting bulls this fall, and a little bit of past hunts that Trey's had with bulls in western states. I do want to apologize in advance. The audio on my mic on this one got a little bit funny. I'm learning how to navigate all this. Either way, enjoy the show. This is InCamp Podcast. What's up, buddy? What are you up to? So what are you up to today? You're just checking a property out?
Yeah, I got to go look at two properties, and then little man's getting a haircut today, so I got to go take him to get a haircut, and the rest of the day I'll be spent in the office. How about you?
I don't know, man. We'll see. It's like 11 degrees outside, but I think I'm gonna take the dog for a walk at some point today.
Yeah, it's I think 14 here, and it's supposed to be cold the rest of the week, and then I think warm back up. So it's kind of it's been interesting how it goes up and down the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I'm sure that's great when you're walking properties too. All the cold weather.
Yeah,
it's pretty good for scouting though, right? Like you're getting you can see all this stuff pretty well.
Yeah, I talked to an individual yesterday. We showed him the property over the weekend, and he was like, he's from Utah. He flew in and was looking at a piece, and he actually ended up making an offer last night and getting accepted. But he was just like, talking about it was a downpour and all that stuff. And I told him, I said, man, I tell you, to me, I enjoy walking properties in the winter and, in the worst conditions, because I tell people you're going to see a property at its worst condition, right? So yeah. You're able to see everything, the leaf and the undergrowth isn't going to cover everything up. So I enjoy walking property this time of year because you can kind of see all the flaws, and if they have any, and you can kind of let, your buyers know, hey, this is, these are the issues we have at play here. Yeah.
I think I want to talk more a little bit about this too. I do have some of that written down, but we didn't even introduce my man, as the Cam would say, from the by God, West Virginia, Mr. Trey Kearns. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I work for Whitetail Properties Real Estate now. Was in the engineering world and corporate world for 6 or 7 years, and I've been working for Whitetail Properties now here in West Virginia for going on my third year now. And huge outdoorsman, used to really be big into fishing and hunting pretty evenly, and as I've gotten older and responsibilities have kind of taken hold, I've kind of delegated my time and what I want to do to hunting and a little bit of scouting, I'd say, but mainly just trying to get in the woods and enjoy myself. And the last couple years have kind of changed a little bit for me in perspective of having a kid. Got another one coming here in 2 months, and I'm excited to get that journey started with him, and I know that my priorities are definitely going to shift as the next couple of years as he gets older, and I'm excited for not just me being in the woods. It's going to be let me take him and enjoy that time with him in the woods. So I'm looking forward to that and making those memories. So it should be cool.
Yeah, that'll be great, man. I think he's gonna be a killer. It's kind of funny whenever I talk to friends that have kids that are getting ready to get into hunting. It's like, man, you got a lot that I didn't have when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Just like from things as simple as like hunting apps, like GPS hunt at, like on X or Spartan Ford, whatever you're using. Like we didn't have anything like that growing up. It's a huge advantage to kids.
And I've told myself 100 times, I'm going to continue to tell myself, I don't want to, pigeonhole him. I want him to learn how to hunt and scout like I did. You know what I mean? Like my dad started me off squirrel hunting and stuff like that. Yeah. I'm not going to make it not fun for him and say, well, you got to wait till you're bow hunting since I'm such a big bow hunter now. I'll do anything with him. I mean, that's how my dad got me out in the woods, and I think that's, what makes you an outdoorsman. is going out and doing those little things at least while you can. I mean, I shot my first deer, I have memory of that when I was on my Pap's lap when I was 5 years old. So, I mean, doing those things, you blink and, yeah, he's almost 2 now, but you're going to blink and he's going to be 5, and then, he's going to be going hunting with me. So I'm excited to do that, especially, while my dad's still around, taking him, with my dad so my dad can hopefully enjoy that. So.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, you're pretty like hardcore, like you said, you were really into fishing at one point in time, and I think that you probably get the fly itch every now and then, but do you think that you'll change the way that you hunt a lot? I mean, you do like a little bit of out of state elk hunting and all kinds of deer hunting and that kind of thing, but do you think you'll be open to, like you said, taking him squirrel hunting or any kind of things like that just to get him interested?
Yeah, I think I'll still do my trips that I want to go and do. If I draw a tag or, it's a, reoccurrence thing for, Cam and I to go out to North Dakota, every August and September. So I think that'll stay. I think it'll just evolve a little bit, and as he gets older and I feel like he can handle that, then I'll take him with me. But I think my priorities will change in, me hunting, say September and October, typically I'm bow hunting, right? So, I mean, I think those will change, and my time will be spent with him in the woods, either turkey hunting in the fall, squirrel hunting, taking him rabbit hunting in January here in West Virginia. Stuff like that. I don't think I'll be designating my time to go bow hunt as much, but the trips I do take, I will try to still enjoy what I like to do. But I think I will enjoy just taking him to squirrel hunt and do those little things until, he's of age where I can actually take him and put him in a tree stand with me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to enjoy your own thing too, because it's important for your kids to see that too.
Right.
That like, hey, dad can enjoy his type of hunting, and then we get to do our thing, because eventually he's going to want to do that too, and it's definitely our release, our way to get away from a little bit of things with the work-life balance kind of thing or whatever. But
right. I see friends all the time that say, like, once you have kids, your life's over, and I don't agree with that. I don't agree with it whatsoever. I think your priorities and your life shifts, but I don't think you need to let go of what your hobbies and your enjoyments are in life either. I think you just have to prioritize them to a better sense of you being able to go enjoy time with your kids, because it's a great time to be out there with them, but also you need to go enjoy yourself too with your friends. I mean, just because you have your kids, it doesn't mean you have to stop doing what you like to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, our parents, obviously, our dads figured out a way to get us into it. I think I got a hunting license, and my in PA, you can do, when you get a junior license, you can hunt everything on it. You muzzle it without getting anything special. You just get like a regular license, and you can hunt whatever you want. You have to get doe tags or whatever to kill does, but otherwise you can hunt waterfowl. You can hunt everything on just $25 license. And my dad was like, I'm gonna take you for everything we paid for on that $20 license, and right. I mean, he didn't duck hunt, but we went duck hunting and we went pheasant hunting, and we did everything, because I think he just wanted me to get the exposure. Like, he's like, if we get outside, even if we don't kill something, like, we're having fun, like eating snacks and sitting by the water watching ducks fly by and other people shoot at them and whatever it is. But he did all the fishing and stuff with us too, and I think it was just whatever exposure we could get was a good thing. And eventually he kind of figured out, like, Aaron and Ben really like to do this, or they really like to do this, and then we would just do more of that thing. But he did a really good job at exposing us to that, and I think there's so much that kids can be exposed to now with, I mean, they have everything at their fingertips, literally. Like, they can, little 5-year-olds are typing in on their iPad, YouTube videos of kids opening Christmas presents, and that gets them excited, that kind of thing, you know what I mean? So I think it is important, just the exposure is just important. And I think I think it is important to kind of hone in on what your kid ends up liking to do. And even though, maybe like let's say rabbit hunting or bird hunting isn't your thing, you don't have to give up your thing to just go do that. Eventually,
Right.
I think kids that are exposed to hunting really enjoy the bigger stuff, like you said, when it's time for him to be in the tree stand and he's got the want to sit there, then that's the time,
Right. Yep.
What about your job makes you, do you think that your job gives you a really hard edge on scouting? This is what I was going to talk about first, but you work for Whitetail Properties, you walk a ton of properties. So whether you're hunting your leases or your private stuff, or you're hunting some of the public that you and I've shared, do you think that it makes it easier to scout those places because you walk so many other properties, like you know exactly what you want to look for?
Yeah, I do. It's funny you said that because we're getting ready to do like a breakdown series on like Instagram Shorts or something like that online, on where like properties that I list, like why this would be a good hunting track, and like talk about scenarios on that piece of property on access, or why we encountered deer bedded on this ridge in certain situations. So we're actually going to start doing that on some of the properties that I list.
Oh, great.
Hopefully they don't last that long and and they're off the market already, but at least it will give the viewers to kind of look at something as far as like why I think this is a good hunting piece. But back to your question, I mean, yeah, I do feel like it does make I'll be walking through a piece of property and I'll be sorry,
That's all right.
send them a voicemail. I'll be walking a piece of property, Aaron, and it's interesting to me that I'll kind of pick out little things that I see throughout the property, and if I find something that I think is going to be beneficial to a buyer, I'll flag that and let them know. So I think being able to walk that many properties allows me to kind of dissect them as I'm going through them, to think, okay, this is going to be a good property or this is not. Like I just walked a piece of property in the Northern Panhandle, and it had 2 roads on each side, had great access on each side, so different wind directions. All the deer were bedded on, it was a south-facing slope, and they were literally all bunched up in there, and you could literally slip in there and use the drainage to come up there and access. So, yeah, I mean, I think of those things, because also sometimes, I mean, you get the opportunity to hunt other landowners' pieces of property. I mean, sometimes they'll be like, hey, if you want to hunt it, you can. I think I've hunted with one landowner one time right before we listed the property. We went out during gun season and actually shot an 8-point buck, which was really cool. And then I think I turkey hunted with a guy last year on his piece of property. But yeah, I mean, it just allows you to, one, build relationships, but also you're able to dissect those properties as you're on them. And that helps me in return sell that piece of property, because I can kind of just, a lot of time I'll talk to people and they'll be like, well, did you walk this property? And I'm like, I walk every single property I list. And that's just because our mentality is we want to make sure if someone asks me about a piece of property, I can give them the most in-depth knowledge about that piece of land that I can.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just your credibility in your career too. Like, you walk a piece of property and to tell them like, hey, the deer bed over here, the bedding could be better. This is what you could do to make it better. This is what I've seen other clients do to make it better, and they start having success. Like, you get talked about then in your line of work,
Yeah.
Does walking these properties, does it scratch an itch for you? Like as far as the scouting and hunting goes, or does it always feel like work?
No, I don't think it always feels like work. I thoroughly enjoy my job. I mean, I really do. I don't think it ever feels like work. I think just the volume of business that we deal with here in West Virginia, with it being a high volume state, I think that in return just doesn't allow me to enjoy it as much as I'd like to kind of like, sit there, spend a lot of time on the property. I kind of go in, knock it out, and I'm on to the next piece of property, because I want to make sure that I'm getting back to my clients in a timely manner. So I don't know if it scratches that itch, just because I know in return I'm hoping to sell that property pretty quickly. I'm probably not going to have, enough time to sit there and really dissect it now for myself to hunt it. Now, if I, knew that I was going to have that property into the spring, then that's a possibility I could do, but I don't know if it scratches that itch for scouting purposes. I thoroughly miss, right before, I had my son, I was really getting into that scouting itch, and we were, you and I were both talking about it all the time. I've kind of just dialed that back, and I know it'll pick it back up at some point, but it's just not, I've not been able to do that since having a kid and starting a new career. It's just allowed me to kind of just not really do a whole lot of scouting, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, hopefully, I mean, at some point it's going to be with him and for him when it comes to the scouting. So you'll find time to get back at it.
Right.
But do you think there are a lot of similarities between how private parcels lay out and public parcels? Or do you think that deer act a whole lot different on either or property? Given, like, let's say the pressure is similar on one versus the other, like a pretty remote piece of public versus maybe a moderately hunted piece of private.
Yeah, I mean, I think they act different. I think as a general whole, I think West Virginia gets a lot of pressure on private pieces, and especially during gun season. I think bow season is very laid back, but I think during gun season and then also on private or public, I think those deer probably act very similar in terms of gun season and, that later half of the year. But given a tract of ground that's probably a little bit more remote, that's not touched, I would say those deer are probably a little bit less apprehensive about, busting out of there, just given the fact that they're not seeing too much, I would say too much sign at all. I mean, I don't know if a whole lot of people put a whole lot of pressure on some public pieces. I mean, I know some individuals that, I hunt with. They hunt a lot of public pieces and never see anybody during, practically the whole entire bow season. I mean, I'm sure there's people just like anywhere during gun season, but for bow season purposes, I mean, they might never see somebody the entire year.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the pressure in bow hunting is so. I mean, it's significant. Even with all the crossbows and stuff that most of the country can use now, it's a real big difference in pressure, especially if you're hunting during the week. You just have such a long season, and you can find those times where people really just don't want to go, like the middle of October.
Yeah.
So,
and that's what I found about this job is it makes it nice to, if I do see a cold front coming, I can kind of jump in the stand whenever I feel like that's, a necessity to get in there, and I don't have to sit there and stress about, I got to work, every day this week. I don't know if I'll be able to get on that deer on, say, Saturday and Sunday when it's 65, 70 degrees, but on Tuesday and Wednesday it was, you had a cold front come through or, a drop in the temperature. So, yeah, I mean, it does make it nice for being able to do that just because I can kind of get in there when I need to.
Yeah. So, given that you, like what you're saying is maybe you don't have quite as much time to scout, which is pretty relatable to a lot of people, especially, people that have a job, have kids. What's your strategy this spring to make it come together this fall?
Well, hopefully have a healthy baby. That'll be the first thing I do this spring. So
can't wait.
Once I have that, I'm not having a baby, but my wife will be. Once that's good to go, and I feel like my wife and I are at a good state to where little man is getting introduced to the new baby and everything's good. I feel like every month I'm going and doing some work on the farm, whether it's, me putting out alfalfa bales and feeding protein and doing a little bit of shed hunting. I mean, I'm doing that. Like 2 weeks ago, I was on a piece of public in Ohio and found a really big shed on a deer that I knew about. That gave me some insight on what that deer was doing. So I guess it wouldn't be, with limited time, Aaron. I mean, the biggest thing I try to focus on is my scouting window is not 2 months out of the year. It's kind of throughout the whole year, but it's smaller time frames in which I'm going. So as long as I can piece that together, I mean, yes, deer are doing different things at different times of the year, but I just try to get little breaks to go do some scouting here and there when I can. And I think that is what I try to do over the course of the 12 months to try to get ready for the next following year.
Yeah, and that's such a good mentality, because it really does, it does help your family love it better when you're around to really prioritize them. But you just learn how to prioritize hunting differently, and if you can capitalize on that, which you definitely did this fall, I think that's really helpful for a lot of people to understand. Like, you don't have to scout 1,800 miles every spring and spend 50 days in the woods. You just have to have the right 2 or 3 days, maybe more spread throughout the year, just when the time's right.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think for the general listeners or viewers, I think a lot can relate to that sense, just because would we all like to go out there and scout for 2 months on end every single weekend? Yeah, it's what I used to do before I had kids and priorities and stuff. But now, like you said, I mean, spreading that out, one, gives you a better general sense of what the deer are doing over the course of the entire year. So they're not going to do the same thing. And I think that develops you to at least give you a better idea. Are you going to be, dialed in beginning of season, early season right out of the gate? Probably not, but you're learning stuff so that it can put you in a good position to adapt to the weather as it changes and the season changes on what those deer are doing throughout that 12 months. So I think if someone can do that, I think it does a lot for somebody that wants to try to get out there at a decent hour.
Mm-hmm. I think that's something you do so well, because this past fall, I think because how the deer change maybe based on weather and that kind of thing. Obviously, everybody talks about like cold fronts and weather fronts or whatever, but man, you really knew something about the farm you were hunting this past year, and you went in on some really, really ugly weather. Like, you threw a lot of chips on a real bad weather day to go kill the buck that you killed this year. Why don't you just talk a little bit about that?
So that started, we picked up this farm in Ohio two years ago.
I'm going to pause you for just a second so I can preface this. This was one of my favorite deer hunting stories this year, so don't mess it up.
Okay. All right. So this whole story began 2 years ago.
Uh-huh.
My dad and I picked up a farm, and when we picked up that farm, we had no indication about it, no idea. It was just all woods. You have a couple small tracts of open open field on the property, so about 8 acres, and we would have some setups in there. Let me change that. Let me start this over. We picked up this. You got me nervous now because you're like, this is the good story. So,
it is. It's a great story. I think so many people can learn something from it. So.
Yeah. Okay. So my dad and I got this farm 2 years ago. We leased the property.
Mm-hmm.
It's all big woods in Ohio, and we didn't know anything about the property. From that day, I took it upon myself to go down there and scout when I could. My dad and I would go down there. We would get everything ready to go. Yes, we put out protein feeders, fed the living crap out of these deer to see what was going on in that area. With that, last year was the first full year we had to hunt this entire farm, and learned a lot about the farm. I don't know if I hunted, and this just goes back to just learning about the farm, and I encourage people that hunt new pieces of property, get new farms. I don't know if I hunted the same tree more than 2 times the entire year. And I hunted a lot last year, and
Mm-hmm.
I literally don't think I hunted the same farm more than twice, or the same tree more than twice. I bounced around and tried to learn everything I could about that farm and what those deer were doing throughout the entire year last year. If I got lucky, great. If I didn't, I still was learning stuff, and I probably put myself in a position where I seen more quality deer than I ever have, just because I wasn't sitting in a fixed spot over a feeder, Just in a tree stand that I set in the summer, I was literally bouncing around based on a map and just trying to figure out what these deer were doing. And I looked on my mapping, found this one spot that I really wanted to get to. I got in there and I figured out what this deer was doing to some extent. I knew he was coming over to the food source, which was, 400 or 500 yards away in one of those smaller fields we had on the property. It was, maybe 6 acres. And then he was coming back over to this ridge. Well, I got pictures of him all in November, hunted him a lot. I was in Kansas, I think, that year. So I didn't get to hunt him too much during the window. He was walking a bunch. And we put out a bunch of different cameras, was figuring that deer out. And then we came in towards the end of the year, and I didn't end up harvesting that deer in the year that the first year we were there. Well, then preface that, all winter I left cameras up all year and started working like what that deer was doing from point A to point B. And I finally figured out that deer was going off this one ridge, working down this one side, and using this real tiny pinch point and working over towards this. But there was like 3 or 4 different spots that this deer could have accessed to get over to that food source. Well, I had cameras on like 2 of the 4 spots or 3 of the 4 spots, and there was one flat that I wanted to really check out and see if he was on that. Well, I never put a camera on that last year. I did hunt it one time in a saddle, and I had really good success and seen a lot of deer there, but I just didn't have any indication that he was there. So towards the end of the year, he ended up losing his eye. He was on the feeders nonstop till he dropped his horns. I went up there to shed hunt one day. The next day I woke up to go shed hunt, got like 5 or 6 inches of snow in like late February, 1st of March. And I literally was like, well, I guess I'll just go home because I only had one day to go. So I went back home, and that summer I went out and hung some stands. My dad and I hung some cameras, and I put a camera down on that flat in between that transition spot that I hunted with a saddle but never got to go in there. And all summer long, didn't have a whole lot of pictures, but had a few here and there of him. And then I think I went to North Dakota, in October, and I told my dad to go down there and check that camera. He went down there and checked that camera, and that buck was on that card literally, I think, I don't know, probably 7 out of 10 days in a row in daylight, early October, late October. He was there all the time, like just walking through. There was no feed source there, or no food source there, or nothing. He was just using that flat. He felt comfortable with transitioning over to that field over there. So I get back, hunted, I think, early October or early November. Didn't really have a whole lot of luck. Deer was very nocturnal at that point. Kind of came back, was watching my camera. Didn't have cell phone service there, so I couldn't run a cell camera. So I think right about then, my dad and I were wanting to go back down there, and I knew with his bad eye and it getting cold, I felt like this deer was going to go and transition back to that food source and get up off of his feet. He just was not. It didn't seem like to me he felt too good, like there was maybe an infection or something going on behind his eye. But he always up on his feet with bad weather. And I studied him and knew that he was coming from that flat, from that bench over across that flat and going directly over to that food source. So we've had hot weather this entire time. My dad went down there the day before me. I think I had to work. And I told him to go down in there and check that card. Now, he hasn't checked it since October. Goes down in there and checks that card, and that deer is still in there like 8 out of the 10 days, but he's like nighttime and not, he's daylight and nocturnal back and forth. So, I didn't have indication that he was going to walk daylight, but I just felt confident with that storm coming in. So whenever we got in there, my dad got there that night. He went in there and pulled that card. I came down that night at like 11, 12 at late, and I checked that card that evening. And again, he was on there a lot. So I told my dad, I said, I'm going to go in there tomorrow. My dad was, we have a elevated blind over on one of those fields. He's like, it's going to be too nasty for me. He goes, I'm going over there. So I get up in the stand, nothing's happening. And all of a sudden it starts pouring the rain down, turning to ice. Had like a 20-25 degree temperature swing. It was like 50-60 degrees the day before, and it was supposed to get down below 30. And I'm sitting there, and I mean, the snow is like accumulating, piling on top of me. I think, a 1 8 point at first light, seen a doe and maybe another buck. And I'm sitting there, and I called my friend Dalton, and I said, Dalton, I said, excuse my language, but I said, I'm going to kill this deer today. And he's like, you feel that confident? I said, dude, I know I'm going to. I said, I got a gut feeling. I said, I'm telling you, I've never been more serious about this than I know I am. So we sit there for a little bit, and I took my filming camera, because I was like, oh, well, we'll see what happens. And I had it draped over with my rain jacket.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting, it's like 1 o'clock, 1:30, and I look to my right, and here come that deer, perfect as a picture, right out of that ridge top, out of that bedding area, walks right around, and he's coming down below me. And I turned my camera on and was filming him, and he was walking down in front of me, and the good eye was facing me, so I had to watch what I was doing. And he comes down through there, and my dad and I set that stand, it was like, I don't know, probably February, March is when we put that stand in there, and I didn't go back in there and trim any lanes.
Oh, no.
So this deer was just walking down this ridge in front of me like for 15 minutes, and he just kept walking and walking and walking. And when my dad went in there the day before, he threw some corn out there to see if anything was coming in there. Well, he walked right down that lane, right down that path, and he found that corn and stopped right there. And when he stopped right there, he was still behind a tree, and I think it was like somewhere around 12 or 15 minutes he was just feeding down through there. And he got right around the tree, and the wind was blowing so hard that I thought he was going to get me and wind me, but the wind was blowing so hard that I could barely see through my peep. So I drew, and the snow started coming down really hard, and he finally turned, and I got really uncomfortable and kind of swung around the tree, and I shot. And when I shot him, I was definitely aiming about 3 or 4 inches more to the right, but I ended up hitting like right in the center of his front shoulder, and perfect height though, just given how steep it was. And when I hit him, like initially, just visually, I seen the arrow pop in and pop back out, and I thought, uh-oh, that ain't good. So then he took off running, and it was snowing so hard I couldn't see him go down or anything, and I was paranoid. Went back, hiked all the way out of there. My dad stayed in the tree, or in the blind, and I hiked all the way back to the camper and pulled my laptop out and checked the card. And when I watched the film, like, you could see the arrow bury moored, like almost to the fletching, and then it hit that opposing shoulder and came back out. So I called a buddy of mine with long spur tracking, which is in West Virginia, but they cover Ohio and West Virginia. I knew he had a drone, and he said he was in Ohio that day. So he came up, and I said, I think the deer's dead. I said, I don't know. I know he ran out on this flat. So we took the drone up, and literally right where I said he was, where I last seen him, he was still laying there. And we kind of, his head was propped up on like a poplar sapling, so we thought he was still alive because his head was completely upright, and we were like, okay, well, we'll give him a little bit. Came back an hour later, and this is like 4 o'clock, and we fly, and he's still in the same position. So I said, well, I don't want him to get into dark and then he takes off. So we went down through there, and Sean and I are walking down through there, and we see him. Well, I go full draw, and it's like 50 yards, and I keep walking a little bit, get a little bit closer, and we get to like 35 yards, and his head's still up, and his eyes are open, but I can't tell if he's alive or not. And I get to open spot, and I just bury him, and as soon as the arrow hit, he never moved. So walked down there, was super ecstatic, and grabbed hold of his horns, and all of a sudden, it was as limber as he was 12 hours ago when he was alive. So he just died.
Yeah.
And we were just sitting there like saying, thank the Lord we waited this entire time and came in here, because he was still, alive when we came in here. But it exited, right underneath the armpit. It did come out the other side, but then, he just expired right there. I mean, he died probably at 80 yards from my tree stand. I mean, literally when the snow was cleared and we were standing there, I could see my tree stand from where he was laying, but just when that snow was snowing so hard, I could not see where he went down at, and I just, I did the smart thing and backed out. But yeah, it was unbelievable.
There's so much cool to that story, man, and I think the first cool thing that everybody notices is like how hard it is to sit in weather like that, and honestly, like, I'm sure there were a couple times where you were like, what am I doing? Even though you knew you had like that gut, I'm gonna kill this deer today, there's still a part of you like, this sucks.
Oh yeah, it does. I mean, my dad's tough SOB. And he literally texted me and he was like, I don't know how you're standing it. He's like, I'm freezing to death. And he's like, I'm going back to the camp. You know, at lunch, he went back to the camper and got, you know, a sandwich and warmed up a little bit, then came back out. He's like, I don't know how you're doing it. And, you know, when you have that gut feeling, Aaron, and you learn a little bit about a piece of property and what a deer's doing, it helps immensely being able to see what that deer is going to do. And I could have been wrong. I've been wrong before, but I just had a very high confidence that deer was going to get up out of his feet, especially with how nasty it is. I've killed some of my best deer on the crappiest weather days, whether it's pouring the rain down and it stops right before light and they get up on their feet, or it's just nasty weather and they got to get up and go get something to eat. I think it's not, you know, I wouldn't say necessarily like, oh my gosh, it's a huge temperature swing. It is, but I think it's just an uncomfortable situation. Like when you're sitting there laying in your bed and you're getting just pissed on by the rain or snow or ice or whatever it is, at some point you just kind of want to get up and move a little bit and get warm and just walk around. And it's just like, I feel like that is a reoccurring thing that I see, is like these deer just want to get up and move at some point finally and just get, you know, back on their feet to try to generate some heat and get some movement.
Yeah, I agree. If you hadn't killed that buck that day, would it still have been worth it to try? No. Not at all.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I would have been just, I mean, quite frankly, soaked and miserable if I wouldn't have killed that deer. But I put all my eggs in that basket. I mean, my wife called off work, or we got a babysitter to come early and watch our son. Like, I mean, I had a lot of chess pieces moved to just go that day. And that's literally, I mean, I didn't even get to enjoy the hunt because literally I drove down there, jumped in the stand, and I can't remember if I got down there that night or early that morning. It was kind of like either way. But my dad was sleeping, so I mean, I checked that card and got in the stand, hunted all day, killed the deer, had to wait for the drone. Drone came and found him, you know, loaded up the deer. My dad still stayed in the stand the whole time. My dad came and, you know, took pictures with me, and then I had to work the next day, literally loaded the truck up, drove home, and went to bed and got a shower. I mean, literally, I called my buddy Jimmy on the way home because he was hunting, and he killed a deer that night as well. And we were both laughing, saying, like, we're out here just killing deer and then driving home for work, and it was just like, you don't even get to sit and enjoy it anymore. And that's something like, you know, I'm not saying everybody's got the most time in the world, but it's just, I would have loved to sit there with my dad, drank a beer with him, talked about the deer, and enjoyed that for another 25, you know, 45 minutes with my dad before we went to bed. But no, I had to jump back in the truck and drive home. And it's just like, you know, yeah, it was worth it killing the deer, but I'm telling you, I would have just enjoyed spending time with my dad and taking it in. Like, I literally gave him a hug, a kiss, and rolled out the door.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the biggest... Killing deer is just a job if it doesn't have the experience attached to it. Like you said, like getting to talk... Like, not that... I mean, obviously, there's times where we have a goal. You had this idea that you wanted to kill this deer, and yeah, it's worth it. And I'm sure your dad was just as excited as you were to kill the deer, you know. But sometimes when we do miss out on that stuff, that's the stuff that really keeps us doing this. Like, it's not, I mean, it's just essentially a butcher shop if it's not that, you know, if it's not the experience and spending the time with your family. But I think the one thing is like you said, you had a lot of chips in that basket, and maybe that, without all the information that you knew about that deer and keeping tabs on that deer, maybe that's not a day you would have been in the stand. You would have saved it for a sunny day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, I think if someone can learn from this, you know, and I'm just saying this specifically, you know, hunting like a private or a public piece, is don't put your eggs in one basket. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like diversify yourself. Like, and that's something I'm just learning as a hunter. Like, I haven't been doing this for, you know, 20 years where I'm just a successful hunter. As I'm getting to an adult, 25, 30 years old, I'm starting to learn, like, I'd rather bounce around and learn new things. And my buddy Hunter used to do that all the time. And I used to think he was the craziest kid in the world. He would just dive into an area and be like, yeah, I'm going to hunt here today. And he would have some knowledge behind that spot, but he was just wanting to try a new spot. And as I get older, I'm learning that. And I'm like, okay, if the wind direction is bad for this spot, and that's a huge thing, is like what is pushing me to go hunt these different spots is wind direction. So if the wind direction's good, I'm going to at least get in a close proximity where I think this deer is going to be and hunt a new spot. Like, I'm just going to hunt a new spot. My wind's good. I know I'm not going to blow any deer out. And I've had more fun doing that and seeing new deer and more deer by just bouncing around and checking new spots out. And that, to me, has made me a better hunter, just because I'm not afraid to go dive into a new spot and just see what happens.
Yeah, I think anything that we can do that's new in the woods is important, whether it's, you're out stalking squirrel, whatever it is, like something about it will make you a better hunter in all aspects, whether it's deer hunting or whatever you're learning about the property or the animals that live there. I think anything you can do that's new, especially in deer hunting. I think the other cool thing that you said is, it's really, I mean, you obviously had a stand hung for this deer, but you didn't spend one day in the same tree if you were hunting mobile. And I think that's so important on a farm. Because deer learn where, if you hunt a stand a couple times, deer learn where those tree stands are from year to year. Like, you can get in the same tree stand next year for the first time, and the deer already know where it's at.
Right.
And I think that's pretty key. I think the other cool thing is, like, we live in this era, from your story, Trey, is like we live in this era of technology, and I think there's no discounting tracking dogs. I think that's such a cool, like, kind of new, not really a new trend, but kind of really something cool. But we have all this, we got GPS hunting apps, and we have e-bikes, and we have cell cams, and I think the drone thing is kind of cool. Like, I think that it could, obviously, if you use it correctly as a tool, I think one hard thing for people to get over is, like, well, what's keeping that guy from hunting with a drone versus tracking with a drone? Well, I mean, if somebody wants to hunt with a drone, it's illegal, and they're going to do it anyway. You know what I mean? If they want to do the illegal thing. And I think the tracking thing is so cool. So obviously your experience was pretty good with it. What are your thoughts on the drones?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll give you two examples. I shot a deer in Ohio, I don't know, 2018, 2019, somewhere in there. And we had a tracking dog. Drones were not around at that time from a finding standpoint. So we had a tracking dog. Great dog. Found the deer, 24 hours later, and the deer was still alive. And we jumped the deer up, and the deer took off running all the way up through this giant thicket. Ended up finding the deer 2 or 3. We went down there for weeks. Ended up finding the deer 2 or 3 months later, dead. Completely no hair, no bones, no nothing. Found the skull. Was super ecstatic about it. Had a broadhead that did not deploy, and literally I don't know what happened till this day. So that my experience with that is, dog did a fantastic job. But the dog jumped the deer up, and the deer pushed even further and probably would have expired possibly right there in that spot, which was only, 250 yards from my stand. Then, fast forward to last year, took the drone up, knew exactly where that deer was going to be. The deer was potentially still alive based on how, mobile his head was when I found him. If we took a dog down through there, that deer probably would have jumped up and took off. And it was a high wall right off the backside, and he literally could have just went off. And we still had some room to play with on the property we have, but still would have created a lot more work for us if that deer would have just took off and potentially lost him. So I see it in the sense of, if I had that drone in 2018, 2019, that would have definitely helped me. 1, in finding him a lot quicker. 2, would have made me feel a lot more comfortable, because we wouldn't have gone and pushed that deer out. And then, you fast forward to last year, we had the ability to get in there, find that deer, waited another hour, then went down in there, and he already expired. So, I think from a benefit standpoint, I have my drone license, and I fly a drone for real estate. I think it is a really cool idea. You're always, no matter what you introduce, they introduce crossbows. Guess what? There's still people shooting deer out of their trucks at night with flashlights and crossbows too. But you just have to understand that I do think it is for the benefit of the hunter and the animal to be able to find it like that instead of, and I think that the success rate is probably going to be higher on pushing a deer out and potentially losing it if you did just run a dog in there and it caught wind of it. Because I learned from those trackers is those deer are going to walk with the wind to their back, and they're going to smell whatever's coming, so they know that dog's coming or that person with them as it's tracking them. And in that drone, they have no idea.
Yeah. I do think that's a huge benefit, especially if it's a really, like you said, a really marginal hit, and I mean, that gives you the opportunity to leave the deer lay another 6, 12 hours, whatever you think it needs to happen.
Right.
And I think that's really important, because it's not really not a big deal if you don't find your deer. You know what I mean? Or get some closure on it at least. It's kind of a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a big deal to the public that don't understand hunting, and it's a big deal to the people that, if you've made a bad shot on a deer and you don't recover it, you feel like crap about it, and that's something you can avoid, I think, real easy with the drone thing. So I hope it kind of catches hold, and there is some value seen on it. I think that it needs to be regulated and watched pretty closely. I like the e-bike thing needs to be monitored pretty closely as well. Like I said, I think it's a tool. I think if you use it as a tool, use it what it's meant to be, I think it's a really good thing.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So let's see here. I did have one more thing about it, but we'll probably skip over that. How do you feel when you eat tag soup? Like, do you feel, so I get to a point where I get to gun season and I'm like, all right, it's tag filling season, and I probably won't shoot a super as close as it can get to legal buck, but I'm pretty close to just whatever's legal. I might shoot it.
Yeah, my opinion of that has changed in the last year or so, Aaron. I've almost ruined trips for myself on how much I beat myself up on not harvesting an animal that I am targeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that on out-of-state trips, and it's just like, instead of enjoying, and I think I talked to you about this, instead of enjoying the trip and making the most of it and the opportunities that I'm presented, I honestly get so fixated on a certain animal if I see it and scout it, that I only want that animal, and that's the only animal I want to focus on. And it honestly takes the fun out of hunting for me, and realistically, I could have filled the freezer with a great deer that anybody'd be happy with, and a great memory with a friend or a family member, and I just passed up on the opportunity. Now, I understand if you're getting to hunt a piece of property continuously, and you can manage that, and there's other various things that I would say about that. But I think for those out-of-state trips, I think you really got to capitalize on the opportunities you're given. And up until last year, my mindset was, I'm focusing on one deer, one specific animal. That's all I'm working on. And I think that really takes away from the fun and experience that I have, because I can think of 5 or 6 opportunities right now that I should have shot at an animal and literally just passed on it because I had something on it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I just feel like on those out-of-state trips, and you're putting money on the table, people are sacrificing time at work for you, family, I think you got to make sure that you capitalize on whatever opportunity you're given.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I think I think the trend is kind of swinging back that way. I mean, like if you get, so like everything's a little bit different. I mean, if you draw Iowa, you're probably not going to shoot the first spike buck that walks by, but
Right.
that's, you're kind of playing the lottery when you go there, right? Like you've waited X amount of years to draw. You want to have fun. You want to actually, if you shoot a buck on the first day, you're not going to be hunting the last day. So, just enjoying that whole trip. But that's a different kind of thing. And I think especially at home, I think that's super important for people to recognize, is just like, it's all right to eat tag soup, but at the same time, you don't have to eat tag soup because you're stuck in your ways for something, waiting for something bigger or whatever it happens to be. Because I think Tony Peterson says it best. Nobody really cares what you kill, and nobody's really going to remember either. I'll remember what buck you shot this past year because I'm your friend, but the 10 people that you don't know that you talk to, or maybe people you've met in passing, or even clients that you've had, aren't going to be like, yeah, Trey Kearns killed this giant 10-pointer in 2024, and this is how, like, they're not going to remember it. They'll probably remember the story, especially if they got to listen to this or talk to you on the phone or whatever, but that's what they're going to remember, is the experience of it.
Yeah, and that's like Arizona this year. That's a state that it's a lottery. I mean, you're hoping to draw a tag there, and I had other opportunities at bulls that would have made me just happy as ever, but it was at the point where I just had this fixation, and I shouldn't have stressed myself out. I really stressed myself out being there because I wanted to have an opportunity at a world-class bull.
Yeah.
And when I couldn't get the opportunity or get close enough, it really frustrated me, and I should have just been looking back at it now, and that trip is what changed my mindset, really, is I should have just been happy to enjoy it. I mean, how many people that are 30 years old get to go to Arizona, bow hunt elk, and for 10 or 11 days and not have another thing in the world to worry about?
Mm-hmm.
Not very many people.
Yeah.
So I should have just been happy as heck, taking it all in. If I harvested something, great. If I didn't, who cares? But I was so worked up on being successful, and I did. I was successful on the last day of the last hour, but it took a large portion of that trip away from me because I was so fixated on killing a giant bull, and it ruined it for me a lot of those days because I was so stressed.
Yeah. I think a lot of happiness from those type of trips end up happening after the fact, because like you're like stressed to drive that far, and how am I going to get the elk home, and what about my family while I'm gone? Like that kind of stuff like creeps in while you're on the hunt, or maybe while you're planning the hunt, and then hindsight you're like, oh, that was the best thing ever. But I can remember when I elk hunted in Colorado, coming down off the mountain and be like, I'm never doing this again. And it's, 2 weeks went by and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go.
Right.
And getting to share the stories and stuff was so much fun. But I'm glad you brought up Arizona, because we got a little bit of time here. You shot a massive bull in Arizona, and I think we'll probably end up. Trey's going to be a regular guest, folks, because Trey's my good. He's my brother. But I do want to do a whole episode on it. But are you planning to elk hunt this year?
I am. I'm taking my dad to Colorado.
You going
hunting the same unit you hunted?
Yeah. All right. Are you going with that outfitter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah. So my dad told me when he retired, he said, I want to go elk hunting, before I get too old and can't do it. So he retired 2 years ago. I don't know if he would feel comfortable enough going with a bow. So I told him, I said, let's go with a gun. So we're going late October. I talked to you. Well, actually, I booked it and didn't even realize that's who you went with.
Yeah.
And then I found out you went with them, and then we've been talking about it. But yeah, so they're they'll horseback you in, set up camp, and then you're hunting on your own. So I think my dad would be feel a lot more comfortable if he didn't have to pack the whole elk out and do all that. So that's what we're doing. He just had knee surgery about 2 weeks ago, so he's got I don't know, roughly about 7 months to get ready to go.
Yeah,
so.
that's the perfect type of hunt for somebody like that, for somebody like your dad. I mean, honestly, it's a great hunt for anybody going on their first elk hunt. But for your dad and his situation, other than the elevation, it's like, it is, the hiking there is not overly grueling. You can, they put you in a camp where you could really stay on that plain and then drop down or up to wherever the elk are when you get there. But it's just such a, the experience of Western hunting, like, we can all talk about, being addicted to it or whatever. You won't know till you get there. But it is
Right.
so cool being there and experiencing it. And I think the cool thing about that type of hunt that I think your dad's gonna like is, like, you do have that sense of, like, you did it on your own. Even though, like, you have guides or whatever, they're putting you in places kind of telling you, oh, the elk are over this way and that kind of thing. But it's a really cool experience there. So I'm glad you're getting to go there with him.
Yeah, it'll be really cool. There's 4 of us going, so it'll be me, my dad, my good buddy Dalton, and my good buddy Greg. So we're all 4 going because they said they want to take 4 people. So we're gonna go and see what happens. I mean, my focus is literally get my dad an elk, and then we'll go from there on getting me one. But I think we're gonna kind of split up and go 2 and 2 and see what we can come back with. But I'm really excited to get out there, and hopefully we're gonna have to upgrade my dad's hunting stuff before we get out there so he doesn't freeze. But we'll be good to go. He's rehabbing that knee back, and I think he'll be feeling pretty good when we get out there, hopefully.
Cool. So last thing, this is kind of a quirky question, so we're gonna try it out. But how do you think hunting, fishing, the outdoors, how do you think it really has a impact on your life? Like, what level of impact does it have for you?
I think, me being in the outdoors with my dad and my grandpa has really shaped me, and I know this is kind of like a quirky answer, but I think it's really shaped me who I am today, just because I've formed my own opinions on life and the drive and success and the hardworking aspect of everything. But I think hunting is who I am. You don't look at the attributes and what kind of person is Trey, but I think hunting is a very large portion of my life, and it is something that it's practically the only hobby that I have that I consistently do on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody might have 5 hobbies, 10 hobbies, one really good hobby. This is my one really good hobby that I thoroughly enjoy, and that is a very diverse hobby, because I can go shed hunting, I can go scout, I can go take a trip out west, shoot my bow in the backyard. But I think that is the hobby that has been a part of my life since I've been a young kid, when I shot it on my grandpa's lap. I'm not saying that my 2 sons are going to be all ate up with hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are, great. If they aren't, no big deal. But it'll be a part of my life till the day I die. I mean, I think it's just something that has given me happiness, and I thoroughly enjoy. I'm a very, independent person. So I think, when I go out there and I sit down and I'm always on the go, and I don't, my wife says you never stop. Like, you always are on the go and doing stuff and working. And I think hunting just allows me to go out in the woods and just decompress, just sit there and relax a little bit and just bring everything together for myself. I think it can just allow me to realize how blessed I am as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And what relationships I've built over the last however many years. I mean, you and I would not be talking here today if it wasn't for hunting. So
100%.
I mean, I think it's who I am completely, but it'll always be something I'm a part of till the day I die.
Yeah. And that's so true. I mean, all the relationships that we make through this and the friendships. I mean, you and I met, I guess, 5 years ago now, right? 4 or 5 years ago, at the Great American Outdoor Show, because of people we were in friendships with because of hunting.
Yeah.
I remember that first night we met, I guess we met at the show that morning, and this crazy dude with his southern accent from the By God walks in, and I remember how many trail cameras you sold that day, because you could sweet talk your way out of a cardboard box. But you sold so many cameras, and I remember just having fun, like high five. Oh, well, I gotta try to beat this guy. We go, all right, well. And then we went back to the house, and I think there was no beer in the house. So you were like, all right, let's go get beer. So you and I are driving to go get beer, and had some of the coolest swapped some of the cool in the half-hour drive we went to get beer. We swapped some of the coolest stories that we had about deer hunting and whatever, scouting adventures we were on. And friendships happen so easy when you can connect on something like that, because like you and I keep touch pretty freaking often for the short time that we got to meet at a place like that. And I think that's one real cool thing about this sport and hobby that we have, is that you can really build some cool, strong friendships off of things like this. But man, I really appreciate you coming on. This is going to kind of be a new thing, so I have not dropped any episodes yet, so you will be in one of the first couple of episodes. Can't wait.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Do it again, and
it's good to hear from you, buddy.
I appreciate. Yep, you too, buddy.
All right, I'll talk to you.
All right, buddy. Later.
There you have it, everyone. That's Trey Kearns from By God, West Virginia. Check him out at Whitetail Properties. Check us out on Instagram at InCamp Podcast. Go ahead and subscribe to the show and share it around. Thanks for listening. This is InCamp Podcast.